Welcome to Coach My Wellness, a weekly show dedicated to bringing you information about healthy habits and behaviors just for the health of it. Here's your hosts, Joanne and Tammy.
Welcome to Coach My Wellness, just for the health of it, featuring your hosts, Joanne and Tammy. As we continue on our series of health and wellness ideas and support for you, we have a lot to talk about today. And one of the things that has come up, Tammy, you talk about this all the time, is the Buddah brain. Can you explain to everybody exactly what Buddah brain is?
So it's really about changing our thought process. And everybody says, oh, I can't change the negative thoughts. I always automatically go to the negative thought, things like that. And really, Rick Hanson in his book, Buddah Brain, talks about how we can actually change the physical composition of our brain by creating new neurons. And I know everybody's heard the old adage about use it or lose it, right? And so our brains, as we're newborns and children, are building neurons like crazy. But then at some point, it starts trimming off the neurons that aren't being used. So what our job is when we want to create a new behavior, create a new pattern, create a new thought process, is what we're actually doing is creating a new neuron pathway. So we're allowing new thoughts and we're intentionally thinking new thoughts to make a new pathway. And then what happens is things that fire together, wire together.
Well, that really sounds a lot like transformation. And when we talk about our weight management programs that we offer to our clients, it's all about we can give them all the information in the world. But unless people are making changes and are transforming, then it's just in your head. So much as the body is built from the foods that you eat, your mind is really built from the experiences that you have. And it seems to me that the flow of experience gradually sculpts your brain, which will ultimately shape your mind. And some of those results can be recalled if you think about it. Something such as, this is what I did last summer, or that is how I felt when I was in love. But most of the shaping of your mind really does remain forever in the unconscious. And it's important to bring those thoughts up because that memory will help to establish the interior landscape of your mind, which is the part of what it feels like to be you. And that's based on the accumulating experiences that you have as you've lived your life.
Right. And so it's important that, when you hear people say, well, I don't know why I think this, but I do. That's what that is. That's those old memories, which is called the implicit memory, right? It's not something that's conscious. It's in the unconscious. And so I don't know why I always feel bad about this or I always think this. Well, that's the implicit memories that are establishing that feeling. And what Rick Hanson calls it is it's residue. And so if you think about residue on like dishes, if you do dishes, right? And you don't wash them in hot enough water or you don't use enough soap, they come out and they're still greasy, kind of, even though you just wash them and you rinse them. So that residue is still there. And so what our job is in changing our expectations, changing how we think about our life, changing about how we think about everything about who we want to be, is learning how to recognize that residue and then cleaning it out.
So along with that, when you think about things, that what we remember are really two things. We have the negativity that we self-talk to ourselves quite a bit, and internalizing the positive. But, here's really where the problem lies, Tammy, is that your brain preferentially scans for recalls or reacts to unpleasant experiences. And it's almost as though that's what sticks. Kind of like, that Velcro or that Teflon, right? So even when positive experiences maybe outnumber the negative ones, the pile of those negative implicit memories, naturally, they grow faster. And then the background feeling of what it's like and how you feel really can be very glum and pessimistic. So the question is, how do we then internalize the positive and keep our mindset? What I always say is, are we moving closer to our goals or further away from our goals? So it's coming back to that whole part of really internalizing what the positive is.
Right. And so when I'm working with clients and myself as well, at some point you have to, as a coach, as a therapist, you have to do these things that you're utilizing with your client, right? If I want you to change your thought process, if I just tell you what I've read or what I think, it's not as impactful as if I have done it myself and I have that experience of sitting in the experience, changing the negative experience into a positive experience, and then allowing my brain to record what that positive experience feels like. Because we so develop our emotions, our thought processes based on the emotion that goes with the thought, not just the thought. So what you can do, there's a few things, and I use this with my clients with having food as well. When all of these things around us are happening that are good, but we're still feeling like, I don't know, it's good for everybody else, but it's not so good for me. Or someone says, oh, you're so great at this. And the first thing you do is, oh, well, I'm not so great at that. You immediately sort of discount their compliment. I'll have my clients really practice shutting that retort, shutting that down, and then just saying, thank you. You're right. That is a strength of mine. I do that well. Even though the brain is kind of like going crazy and thinking, oh, if they only knew, if they only knew, if they only knew, right? So that's one thing about how do you change what your brain is thinking. And before the end of the show, we're going to do like a little experience exercise on how do you actually do this. And so you want to be actively looking for the good things.
It is so crucial to keep that good stuff. And it's almost, how we talk about fake it till you make it?
Mm-hmm.
It's very challenging when you're going through a difficult time to let it go and to think of good stuff because you're so absorbed in the mess and the muck.
Right. You have it all over you, right? It's just there. And it's kind of like going out in the rain and you can't not be in it. You can't not get wet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So have anybody said to you though, oh, my life has always been so hard. It's always been so horrible. I used to do this, right? My parents were that, and my life hasn't been good. So they only look, again, the residue of the negative. But sometimes there are simple things that you can take in and savor, such as the smile of a child.
Mm-hmm.
When you're out, seeing a little kid that's really having fun or enjoying. How about the smell of an orange, sitting there, having that orange and like really smelling it and taking it in and enjoying it. So we so quickly want to move past all of these little things instead of bringing a full mindful awareness to them. And those are the things that your brain can hook onto that also bring more joy and satisfaction to your life. A couple of episodes ago, we talked about the difference between happiness and joy. And happiness is dependent upon the happenings around me. It's much more external, where joy is an internal thing. And that's where people struggle so much, is obtaining that joy. But one way you can do it is by changing how you think. So savoring those experiences, not overlooking the small ones, and then savoring them and taking 5, 10, 20 seconds to really just take in whatever's happening. So when you see the little baby laughing and that makes you smile, really take that in. What does that mean? Oh, such happiness. For me, it's my dog. Or when I see dogs on the street, it's like almost immediately my face changes and I'm like, oh, hey, how are you? Like people do that with babies. I do that with dogs.
Me too. Wherever I go.
Yep. And so, you want to take that and just be present in that moment. And we're so like ready to run on to the next thing.
I don't know. I bring this up. I watched the series of This Is Us. I just loved it. Some of you may, some of you maybe not. But in one of the last episodes, there was a scenario where everyone was at a family wedding, and one of the comments during the speech that was made, and this was so profound, Tammy, it was about how life just passes us by. Mm-hmm. One thing after the next, and times when you're at a family function or a wedding, all of a sudden everything just kind of slows down. And for the time that you're there, you're able to just absorb a little bit more of experience than going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next.
Right.
So one of the things and it was just so impactful to me because it was a thought that I had, but I was never able to perhaps find the words to express what I just said. Mm-hmm. So now when I go, we were recently at a family function. We were at a wedding a week ago, and I sat back, and instead of just like dancing and being excited to see everybody, I did all of that, but I took a deep breath and I walked to the back of the room and I stood and I breathed and I looked at the space and I was like, I want to take this all in. I want to enjoy just looking at everybody being together. It was so cool. And what that reminds me of is years ago when I had my photography company and I used to shoot weddings. One of the things that I always did at every single wedding that I was at is at some point in the middle of the busy party time, I would ask the bride and groom to come with me. And they'd look at me like I was out of my mind. But what I would do is I would walk them to the back end of a room and I would say, just give me 30 seconds. And they looked at me and they said, turn around. And they did. And they said, take a deep breath. And they did. And they said, I want you to look at what's happening. This is your wedding.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many brides and grooms had tears coming down because they were so absorbed that they weren't able to
take it in,
understand and take in the magnitude of what was happening. So it's truly a matter of taking it in, allowing yourself to absorb it so that those beautiful memories and positive things that are happening can stay with you, where it's not just a fleeting thought. It's a conscious decision.
Right. And like that brought tears to my eyes, and I wasn't even at one of those weddings, right? Because it's like when you're the bride and groom or maybe something not even that grand, but you're having a dinner party or it's the holidays, and how many moms, dads, whatever say, oh, I don't even get to socialize with the family or be with them because I'm in the kitchen and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And they're running all around. So you never really get, the busyness overtakes the emotions that set in and allow you to savor that experience.
So when you're paying attention to the rewarding aspects of the experience, for example, how great it might feel to get a big hug from someone you love, especially when we haven't seen our families perhaps in quite a long time. There's a lot of us going through reunions right at this, time in our lives. But focusing on those rewards really, there's a chemical thing that happens. It increases the dopamine release. And what that does is it makes it easier to give the experience to your attention. And it strengthens those neural associations and implicit memory, which is what you were just talking about.
Right. And it so that remember when I said that the emotions tie with the memory, and that implicit memory, while sometimes is not the, oh, I remember exactly when this happened, but you remember how you felt. And I know you've heard the saying about people won't always remember what you say, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
That's true. So true.
Because the neurons, again, going back to building and changing the pathways in their brain, when they fire together, they wire together. And the chemicals and the thoughts and the emotions, when that all fires together, that's what comes back up. That's what allows you to be in that space.
Yeah, like strengthening your feelings of satisfactions, whether it could be doing a work project, or it could be a home project, or a million other things. But when you think about some of the challenges you've had to overcome in completing a project, there's this feeling of satisfaction that happens. And whatever positive facts you find, if you can figure out a way to take a deep breath and have a mindful awareness of them and open it up to just letting it in, it can affect you in such a positive way. I love this quote that I heard from somewhere. It's like sitting down to a banquet. Don't just look at it. Dig in.
Dig in. Exactly. And allowing yourself to feel that and feel how good it feels to get focusing on all of those rewards. You're not doing this to cling to the rewards, but rather to internalize them so that you carry them inside of you. And you don't need to reach to the outside world. That's where you're internalizing the joy. You're bringing it all in so that residue from the positive things is what begins to coat the inside of you and your emotions around that.
Well, what's really cool, though, is that our brains really do have that capacity to learn and to change itself. And that's the neuroplasticity that you were referring to earlier.
Correct.
And usually those results are tiny, little incremental alterations in neural structure, but those things add up as the year goes by. And occasionally those results can be very dramatic. It's just the way that it is. And we have to keep on just building on the positivity. And I love it when people talk about the glass half full, or you look at it, the glass half empty.
Right.
And what I'll say sometimes to people is, well, if you're always that person who's looking at it half empty, how's that working out for you?
Right. Usually not too well. Because they're the people that are constantly struggling with something. Right. And because they're not seeing a direct pathway to changing their thought process, they don't see a better way to exist, to be in this world. And, when you strengthen those feelings of satisfaction after just allowing yourself to sit there 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and just savor, let it soak in, just like with a sponge, soaking up all of that good, then that's what can carry you as you keep going.
And look, it's no different. I think about this when I have, whether it's a group class or even with my independent clients, usually people are coming into a coaching session and they're just like jumping out of work, or they just finished dinner, or getting the kids ready. People are just like so busy, crazy, as we know. And in order to really do the work and to allow our bodies to function, I always start out with a grounding exercise. Maybe this is something we could just spend 2 minutes on with our listeners to do, to see if people can benefit and understand what that's really all about. As you're listening to this, maybe you're doing other things. You might be planting in the garden. It's, a Sunday morning right now. I'm not really quite sure what you're doing. But if you're listening, how about just taking a minute or two and stopping what you're doing, and let's try and do a grounding exercise and see how you feel. How does that sound?
I think that's a great idea. Go ahead.
Love to do that?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So everyone, wherever you are, if you can, to just get yourself ready, take a quick moment and just find a seat. Hopefully you're in a quiet place if possible. Put both of your feet on the ground. Put your hands in your lap. Close your eyes. Through your nose, take a nice deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. Hold it. And breathe out through your mouth slowly to a count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do that again. Through your nose, a nice deep breath in. Hold it. Hold it. Let the breath out through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll do it one last time. Nice deep breath in through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. Hold it. Breathe out through your mouth to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. With your eyes closed, just sit for a moment. Take your hands, cross them, and just put them on your chest. Continue to breathe. One more cleansing breath in through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. Hold it. Breathe out to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you're ready, slowly, gently open your eyes.
It's amazing to do that. I know that when I do that, it's like all of a sudden there's a calmness that comes over myself that just sort of soothes everything. And taking that space and doing a grounding exercise like that can also help us in healing different pain, because so many times that residue is such the negative residue, and how our brain recalls things. It's not like a computer that recalls every minute piece of data. It recalls the big things. And in doing that, if we learn this skill, we can take that negative experience and emotion and begin little by little over time infusing it with positive emotions. And then not that the experience changed, but how we remember it changes, which then affects how we internalize and rebuild that thought process and rebuild that memory. So instead of having it be like, oh, something that I did wrong, and just constantly lambasting myself, oh, you were so stupid, why did you do that? You can change how it reacts, your system automatically associating new neural patterns between your amygdala. Oh my God, that's such a hard word. Amygdala and the hippocampus. That's where all of that gets stored. And you can shift that, and it gets reconsolidated and repackaged with the more pleasant emotions to go along with it.
Well, look, so many people have unresolved issues from their childhood and growing up and don't even realize. And those are the patterns that keep repeating themselves throughout our lives in various ways. And there are many times that people get angry with themselves about still being affected by things from the past. Makes sense, right?
Right.
Remember, the brain is designed to change through experiences, especially the negative ones. And as we learn from our experiences, particularly those that happen during childhood, you know, it's a natural thing for that learning to stick with us.
Right. And we're designed to steer away from the things that make us feel bad, the things that our brain considers dangerous. Having that is like, oh, we've survived all of these years because we learned, oh, when we see that saber-toothed tiger, we know, oh, get away from there, right? Our brain, that's why our brain picks up so quickly on the negative. And one thing you said earlier, which I like and I use with my clients, is our brains are attuned to the negative and have it stick like Velcro. And then the positive things are like Teflon. The brain says, oh yeah, okay, I got that. I don't need to really remember that. And so it's sort of like it bounces off. And so you need more positive experiences to counterbalance the negative experience. That's why this is work to change. How do we think? How do we feel? How do we change all of these aspects?
Well, I think that's why it's so important to have a coach or someone that can help you to do that. I know that it was very challenging for me. I wouldn't have known how to begin.
Right.
And it wasn't until I had my coach, as remember, I talk about that ball of wool and those strands that have to be pulled out one at a time. I'm one of those people where I run 1,000,000 miles an hour and I multitask and I have things going on and I go from one event to the next and one appointment to the next. And I am constantly on the move. And it's challenging sometimes to sit back and, as you say, smell the roses. And it's not because it's difficult to do that, but it's just that I don't have those signals to tell me to do that. So one of the things that I did, and I love this, and not that everyone should get an Apple Watch, but on my Apple Watch, I have a reminder that tells me to breathe.
Yes, mine too.
I love that. And
sometimes I listen and sometimes I don't.
Hello, we're all human. Yes. But the times that you do listen, how beneficial is that?
Oh my God, it changes. It changes the next half an hour or hour of my time until it tells me to breathe again, because by that time I've gotten off into, another rabbit trail of emotions.
Right. And it's just that, I think back for all of those out there that have kids, just remember, I'm sure you've heard this a gazillion times that, when your kids get crazy and have temper tantrums or are acting out, that instead of just reacting negatively, to take a deep breath and count to 10.
Mm-hmm.
That's, as parents, one of the tips that I really tried to follow as my kids were getting older and more challenging. And it really does make a difference as far as how to respond. So you're not just going off the cuff, that you're really thinking about what it is that you want to say in order to handle the situation, and do it with a little bit more grace. I guess that's the word. Grace instead of the gremlin, right?
Exactly. So thinking about our brain, our brain will learn throughout our entire lifetime, unless you start developing, a neurological disease like dementia or Alzheimer's. Our brain has the capacity to change and grow and build new neurons and new synapses and all of that stuff our entire lifetime. So it's always important to be learning and changing. And when we think of emotions and experiences, if we take a negative experience, but when we call it up and we start thinking about positive things at the same time, that's how those emotions and feelings change. And what I also tell my clients is it's really important to be pulling weeds and plant flowers. And so we can go into that in our second half of the segment, but my clients will say, what do you mean pulling weeds and planting flowers? And it's like, well, you're the gardener and you can learn to do it.
So stay with us. We're taking a short break and we'll be right back, and we'll talk about pulling weeds and planting flowers.
You've been listening to Coach My Wellness. For more information about healthy habits and behaviors, visit our website at coachmywellness.com and follow us on Instagram at coachmywellness_CMW for weekly live streams Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. We hope to see you there.